In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how data mining with R programming is wildly useful for any professional. And I mean any professional. What I will demonstrate in this video is whether you work in product management, or you work in HR, or you work in marketing, or you work in finance, these tools and techniques are going to be useful for you if your goal is to have more impact at work using data. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Dave, that sounds great, but I don't know how to program in R. And I've never written any code before. That's okay. Don't worry about it. R programming is easy for any professional to learn. All you need is basic Excel skills, and you can learn how to analyze data in R. And I don't expect you to believe that right this second. So keep that in the back of your mind. And at the end of this video, I will point you to some resources on my channel that will prove to you that you can learn R programming if that's what you want to do. Okay, so let's start off with a hypothetical scenario. The first data mining scenario we're going to look at is for product managers, let's say, and it's the area of event log mining using R. This is wildly useful for a product manager as well as many other types of professionals, as you'll see. So here I am in PowerPoint, and I'm going to be using PowerPoint in this video so that we can keep the technical stuff to a minimum. I'm not going to show you any R code or anything like that. And first up, we have a hypothetical scenario from the product management space, and that is event log mining. So event logs are produced by all kinds of computer systems these days. Web servers produce event logs, cloud systems produce event logs. You can even manufacture event logs out of databases using SQL code. So they're very, very common, and they are super, super useful for any sort of business professional who's interested in understanding what's going on. In particular, product managers are often interested in knowing how users actually use a computer system. So here we have an example of using a family of packages, a family of libraries in the R programming language known as BUPA-R, B-U-P-A-R, BUPA-R. Yeah, it's a funny name, but it's a really cool thing. And what we can see here is we have an event log from a computer system, from a hypothetical computer system. Maybe it's a software application that gets sold under a subscription model. And what you can see here are various activities that users can execute using the software. And what you can see here is, based on this diagram, how often are these individual activities actually executed, actually initiated by users. So this visualization can be created in one line of R code from an event log, and it provides very useful information. So for example, what you can see here is that these first 5 activities basically are done by almost 100% of all users. But this last one, using a promotion, setting up a promotion, is only done less than 50% of the time. So as a product manager, that might be important to you. Let's say if you're the PM, the product manager that owns this particular feature, you would be very, very interested in this data. So that's one thing that you can do quickly and easily with BUPA-R, but there's more. So here's another example of the kinds of powerful visualizations, the kind of powerful insights that you can get using R programming with your event logs. And what this shows is the various activities in the computer system and how much time users spend on each one of these activities. So for example, setting up a storefront in this hypothetical software system takes a really, really big chunk of time, more time than anything else, which might make sense to you as a product manager. You might say, yeah, that part of our computer application, our computer system, our software is pretty intense. So yeah, it takes users a long time to do it. But what you might say is, wow, I don't really like how this box plot shows that the range of time that people spend on the storefront is way more than we would expect. And what this data is showing me is that it's taking some people a lot less time, and it's taking some people a lot more time. And that might be something that you as the product manager would be interested in investigating further. So both of these visualizations are extremely indicative of the kinds of insights that data mining your event logs can give you using the R programming language. But I've saved the best for last. Ta-da! Check this out. This visualization is so sweet. Using the BUPA-R family of packages, you can data mine out of your event logs using your R programming a graphic like this. And let me walk you through this. Okay, this is great. So what this does is it takes a look at all of the user sessions. So a session essentially is a collection of related activities. So for example, I log into the software system and I do some things and then I log out. Or maybe I just open up my browser, I go to the software, I'm already logged in, it remembers me, I start doing some stuff and then I close my browser down. Either of those two scenarios represents a session. There's a start endpoint and an endpoint and a bunch of activities in the middle. And what this visualization shows you is for all of the user sessions in the log data, what do people do and what percentage of the time do they do it? Okay, so check this out. So we've got to start right here, and 100% of folks register, which probably isn't surprising, right? You can't use the software unless you register. And then 100% set up a storefront. And let's say that we're a website like Etsy or something like that, where we sell a platform for people to set up online storefronts. And that also would make sense, because why else would you register for the system, for the software, if you're not going to build a storefront? That's what it does. But now check this out. 0.4% do nothing else. Okay, that's a really small number, but it's still immensely interesting, right? Almost 0.5% of people who set up a storefront just don't do anything else and they just leave. That's super interesting. 52.2% go straight to setting up customers, but then 47.4% actually go set up a promotion. That's awesome. And then of this 47.4%, about 0.2% just stop, which is, again, extremely small number, but it could be potentially interesting for you as a product manager. This is awesome. These kinds of data visualizations are so immensely useful. I have used them both as a product manager myself, as well as an analytics professional supporting product managers. This stuff is awesome. And as I said before, you can learn how to program in R and create visualizations like this as a product manager. So that was event log mining using R programming. Wildly useful, immensely powerful type of technique that you can do with your business data. Next up, let's take a hypothetical example from HR. And in particular, this data mining technique with R programming is going to be market basket analysis. If you're familiar at all, market basket analysis is most highly associated with the grocery store industry. However, it is a powerful data mining technique that's useful for any professional. And what we'll see here is a hypothetical but extremely real-world based example of how an HR professional could use market basket analysis to mine HR data. So here we have a hypothetical but yet real-world inspired human resources HR data mining example. And this is based on my experience working as a manager at Microsoft and working with my HR rep. And that is this idea of bad attrition. And at least at Microsoft, and I'm sure this is true at other companies as well, you have employees that are good. They get good reviews, they produce good work, and you don't want to lose them. And in the tech industry in particular, this is a big deal, right? You don't want to lose a good software engineer to go work for one of your competitors. So HR is very, very interested in understanding the factors that are highly associated with bad attrition, good employees that leave when you don't want them to. And you can use market basket analysis with your HR data to do exactly this kind of data mining activity. Once again, this is a hypothetical example, and I'll walk through it. And what you can see here is essentially this idea that I have bad attrition on the right-hand side here, RHS stands for right-hand side, and I'm asking the market basket analysis to go look at all the other columns of data in my, think of it as an Excel spreadsheet. It's a great way to think about it. I got one column for bad attrition, and I got a bunch of other columns for other factors that I pulled from my HR system. And I am asking market basket analysis to go find in the data all of the collections of employee attributes and behaviors and characteristics that are highly associated with bad attrition, and then show me them in descending order. So here we have bad attrition. Notice that it's all the way up and down here, because that's the thing we're interested in understanding. And what we can see here at the top of the list is 3 aspects of the data which are most associated with bad attrition. And they are, 1, a regular promotion velocity. And if you're not familiar with this idea of promotion velocity, it's a concept that employees typically get promoted X number of times in a certain period. So for example, maybe they get promoted on average 3 times in the course of 10 years. Maybe that's the regular or average promotional velocity. That's the concept. Regular promotion velocity combined with this fact that the employee was sourced from an external recruiter, and is a software engineer. So a software engineer that had regular promotion velocity and came to the company via an external recruiter. Those three factors were by far and away the most associated with bad attrition. And what this output tells you, and I'm not going to drain it all because I know it's a bunch of numbers, just look at this column right here, just the lift column. And what this tells you is this combination of HR factors is 2.5 times more likely to be associated with bad attrition than anything else. 250%, 2.5 times more likely. And you can see some other things going on here too. You can see that external recruiter is very, very prominent. It's in a lot of these particular scenarios. They're known as rules, by the way, in these rules. So external recruiting, apparently, at least based on this HR data, is a double-edged sword. Yes, maybe they help you land new candidates to fill your open positions. However, at least based on this data, external recruiting is disproportionately associated with bad attrition. So for example, check it out. Just the fact that you were sourced from an external recruiter, given this HR data, that alone makes you almost twice as likely to be a bad attrit than somebody who was not sourced from an external recruiter. Here you go. An HR example of where data mining with R programming is wildly useful. Next up, let's think about marketing. How could data mining with R programming help a marketer? Marketing is an area that is ripe for data mining with R programming. In my previous job, I spent almost 3 years doing hands-on analytics for various types of areas in a software company, and I spent most of my time working on marketing. And the reason for that is simple. You can use data in the marketing realm and have a direct line of sight to raising revenue, increasing sales, and people love that. Executives love anytime analytics helps marketing because it directly translates into more revenue. So let's take a look at a particular form of data mining known as cluster analysis that can be extremely useful to a marketer. Cluster analysis with R programming is a wildly useful thing for marketers. In particular, cluster analysis is used for customer segmentation. And how this works essentially is you get a big pile of your customer data. Think of it as like an Excel spreadsheet. And in this worksheet, you've got a bunch of columns that describe various aspects of your customers. Maybe when did they first become a customer? What kinds of things do they buy? How much do they buy? Anything you can think of relating to the characteristics of a customer that you have in your database, you can use for customer segmentation. And you use a clustering algorithm for that. And what it does is it goes through all of those rows and says, hey, you know what? I think this customer belongs in that bucket, and this customer belongs in this bucket, and that a bucket over there, and so on and so forth. And eventually what you do is you get a collection of buckets, a collection of clusters of customers. And when you look in those clusters, you look into those buckets, you see that they are typically very similar in many, many regards. And what happens is these clusters are often extremely insightful for you because then you start to understand a little bit more about commonalities between different kinds of customers in terms of their characteristics and then also in terms of their buying patterns. And this is immensely useful. So customer segmentation is something that's bread and butter for a marketing professional interested in having more impact with data. And let me give you an example here. So let's say this is a very simple example. It's hypothetical, but it'll convey the idea. So let's say I've got a pile of data here of my customers, but I've only got 2 pieces of information about each customer. How many blog posts they view. It's because let's say my marketing efforts are heavily invested in content marketing. So my company has a blog and we use the blog to drive people to it from Google search. And hopefully they like what they see and then they become customers. And then also we have customer service calls here. This idea that customers read our blog posts and they come in and they become paying customers. And once they become paying customers, they need help. So they call our customer service center. What would be cool is to be like, okay, is there any sort of pattern in the data here? Are there any sorts of groupings of customers that are more similar to each other given these 2 pieces of data, given these 2 columns of data in my worksheet? I want the algorithm to bucket them into collections of folks that are most like each other. And what you can see here is just the raw data just all plotted out. So what I can use in R programming is something known as kmeans. It's a very common clustering algorithm. It's very simple to understand, very simple to use effectively, and it will go through and try its best to find these clusters of customers that are most similar to each other. And I run the algorithm on this data in R, and voila, I mine my data and I get insights out of it. And you can see here that all of the clusters are now color-coded. And you can see here I have a distinct grouping of customers that are most similar to each other down here. And it kind of makes some sense when you just look at it that, yeah, these guys are all pretty close together. And it gets a little more complicated up here. You can see this coral color and this green color here. And in this space right here, we've got some problems, right? We've got some mix and matches here. So clustering is not necessarily a perfect way to like segment out your customers and put them in groups and then understand the groups, but it is a super, super powerful way to use data mining with our programming to have more effect, more impact as a marketing professional. Next up, let's take a look at the finance space and how machine learning could be beneficial to a finance manager. In my hands-on work as an analytics professional, I have spent a lot of time working with finance folks inside of the company, folks that are worried about, concerned with, responsible for, accountable for the money, the money of the company, which is a pretty important thing. In general, finance analytics is still relatively nascent. There's a lot of opportunity for finance professionals to learn data analysis skills, learn data mining skills, and then have more impact with those skills in their work. It's a way, quite frankly, to differentiate yourself as a finance manager because most finance managers don't have these skills. And in particular, let's take a look at how data mining with our programming in the form of machine learning, which is one of the most popular forms of data mining, can help a finance manager. And in this particular scenario, we're going to think of a finance manager that works for a software company that sells software as a service. So they have a software package, people sign up for it, and they pay month after month after month to use the software. Now, that's all typically done with credit cards. And one of the things that finance people, in my experience anyway, are extremely concerned with in that kind of business model is credit card chargebacks. That is, for example, a charge goes through from the software company to a customer's credit card, and then it gets disputed for whatever reason by the customer, by the credit card holder. Typically, companies lose these a lot. They lose these chargeback arguments a lot. And what happens is not only do they lose the revenue, but they also get assessed fees for the chargeback from the credit card processor. Finance people hate chargebacks. So in this scenario, we're going to use machine learning to do some data mining and find out what are the characteristics of customers, of users of this software that are highly associated or are predictive of credit card chargebacks. So here we have the results of our hypothetical finance manager performing some data mining using the random forest machine learning algorithm with our programming. And this is one of the potential outputs that you can get. And this is super, super useful. What you can see right here is a chart, a plot, that shows the predictive power of various columns of data vis-a-vis chargebacks. So for example, you can see here that if a user has engaged with the software with less than 10 sessions, so a session is I open up my browser, once again, I go in the software, I use it, and I close my browser down, just like we talked about earlier in the video. That's a session. And if you have less than 10 sessions, it is by far and away the most predictive thing out of all the data used in this data mining exercise, which kind of makes some sense, right? If somebody signs up for a subscription software package that charges them every month, and they're not actually using it, then they might actually dispute any charges because they're like, wait a second, why am I getting charged for this? I'm not even using it. I don't want this anymore, and I don't want to pay for it. So that's one example of how this can be extremely useful for a finance manager to start understanding what are the factors highly associated with credit card chargebacks. Next up, customer service interaction. That's another highly predictive feature. Not nearly as good as less than 10 sessions, by the way, but it's also a pretty good predictive feature. And that might make some sense as well, right? Maybe people that call customer service tend to be not happy. You know, your happy customers never call, and it's only the customers that are unhappy that call. You can see here that using a promo code is also a good predictive feature. It's a good way of understanding who might issue a chargeback and who might not. And that might make some sense too, because maybe people who use promo codes are looking for something very, very cheap, and they're not necessarily very sticky. They're not necessarily very invested in your particular software product. So maybe that's a reason why folks that use promo codes might be more likely than others to initiate a credit card chargeback. And then you can see that this chart clearly shows that the rest of the data drops off precipitously. 0 means that there's no predictive power at all. This particular column of data in your spreadsheet has no predictive power on chargebacks. And you can see here that, it starts to decrease quite rapidly. So these 3 features are obviously very, very important. And maybe the finance manager would take this insight from the data mining and say, okay, I'm going to go work with customer service. I'm going to go work with product management. I'm going to go work with marketing to affect the usability of the product, maybe, so to get people to have more sessions. Go work with customer service, maybe to have better interactions with customers so they're less likely to be unhappy and do chargebacks. And lastly, I might go to marketing and say, stop doing so many promos or do better promos, because the data shows that all 3 of these things are highly associated with chargebacks and they're costing the company a lot of money. Trust me, a finance person could use all the techniques in this video if they would like and have more impact at work with data. As promised, here's some videos that will show you how any professional with only Excel can learn how to analyze data with R programming and then conduct the data mining techniques that we've discussed in this video. Trust me, it is easier than you could possibly believe to get yourself in a world of using advanced analytics techniques like data mining to have more impact at work. If you found this content useful, would you mind helping me out with the YouTube algorithm and just giving me a like? Okay, until next time, please stay healthy, and I wish you very happy data sleuthing.